I suggest we are getting started. Welcome everyone to this webinar with the title Promoting Sustainability in Vietnam's Construction Sector, the Potential of Green Building Certification Processes, and sharing the insights from the CAMaRSEC project. My name is Bruno Fuchs. I'm Vice Chairman of the Green Growth Sector Committee of EuroCham in Vietnam, and I'm as well Sustainability Director for INSI in Vietnam. I will be a bit of the moderator, at least for the first session, until we come to the panel discussion. And one of these tasks is to make you familiar with some technical considerations to make this a smooth webinar. Most of you, I'm pretty sure, maybe not even the first webinar today, definitely not this year, but nevertheless, please turn off your audio to enable a good sound system for all the presentations. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please use the chat box, ideally, with your name and maybe with your company. And then depending on the timing, these questions will be either addressed in the open discussion that we have foreseen later on, or we can get back to you after the event in direct contact. We will have simultaneous translation. So for the language channel, you can choose English or Vietnamese, and there's an interpretation button on the right-hand side of the tab at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So there you can choose which language you would like to listen to. The workshop is as well recorded, both in English and in Vietnamese, and we will post these videos after the event as well through our social network channels. Now, having a quick look at the agenda, maybe, just to see what is waiting for us. We will have a few welcome and greetings from Tommaso Andreatta, if he joined in the meantime. Then we will have an overview of the CAMaRSEC project that will be delivered by Dr. Dirk Schwede. Then we have a presentation from Mr. Truong on the overview on state of sustainable buildings and green building certification schemes in Vietnam. Then we come to the CAMaRSEC project and basically the survey results that have been conducted among certified and conventionally constructed high-rise buildings. And I think there are a few very interesting insights that will be presented by Dr. Thuy and Dr. Michael Weibel. The second part will then be a panel discussion where we have, again, a nice collection of speakers, of panelists along the value chain, I would say. So really interesting to hear the different perspectives from our panelists. And then we have as well maybe a few minutes left at the end for open discussion. As I said, maybe some questions that are coming from the audience. And then at 3:30 or 10:30 in Europe, we will wrap up and close the workshop. And this will be done by Frank Bogade. He's the Vice Chairman of the Green Growth Sector Committee of EuroCham. So now the question is, do we have Tommaso in the call? Okay, that seems not the case. That's very unfortunate. I don't know if he has some connection issues, technical issues. Unfortunately, then we cannot hear from him. But maybe a few, let's say, remarks then from my side, if you wouldn't mind. And I basically use a little bit the description, the rationale that we have for this webinar. When we discussed earlier this year with Dr. Weibel and with the team as well, we said, look, I mean, such a webinar would actually be timely for Vietnam. I think Vietnam is definitely as well on the rise when it comes to green buildings. So the construction and increasingly also the operation of buildings relates to almost 40% of the global carbon emissions. And I think that's a very significant amount, right? So against the backdrop of global climate change, it is an enormous challenge to promote sustainability in the construction sector and particularly in the case of a rapidly urbanizing Vietnam, where we have booming construction activities. So the webinar today will focus on the potential of green building certification processes among residential high-rise buildings in Vietnam. And we would like to promote sustainability in the construction sector as such. So in this context, the results of a large-scale household survey conducted among certified and conventionally constructed high-rise buildings in Ho Chi Minh City will get introduced, and thereby we will focus on what are the building user habits and power consumption habits that we are having in there. As I said, we will have a panel discussion with representatives from architectural design and developer companies. We have representatives from the EuroCham Green Growth Sector Committee and as well other stakeholders involved in the field of sustainable buildings. And we will discuss practical challenges, but as well definitely opportunities that we are seeing in the Vietnamese market to further promote the green building certification process. At the end, what is the objective, obviously, is that we all get an enhanced understanding of the importance on sustainable buildings and of green building certification schemes, and finally, also that we can increase business opportunities for companies who are actually part, today in this webinar, who are part of the building and construction industry in Vietnam. So with this short introduction, and sorry that you couldn't hear from Mr. Tommaso himself, I suggest we go to the second agenda point of today, and that's basically the overview of the CAMaRSEC project. And this overview will be given by Dr. Dirk Schwede. He is the CAMaRSEC project leader. He's the research group leader for sustainable building and system integration at the Stuttgart University in Germany. He's a civil engineer, he's a sustainability and energy consultant, and as well managing director at EGS Plan, which is an international, and director of energy design in Shanghai. Dr. Schwede is DGNB auditor for buildings, lead AP, and as well registered energy consultant. He's the leader of the work package on sustainable building in the Build for People project, enhancing quality of life through sustainable urban transformation in Cambodia project that is lasting from 2021 this year to 2025. And with this short introduction, I would like actually to hand over to Dr. Dirk Schwede for his introduction, please.
Yes, thank you, Bruno, for your introduction. I would like to introduce our project. We have 5 minutes. It will be a challenge to introduce all our project background and also the great consortium, which you can see here. Our project, CAMaRSEC, is dealing with climate adapted material research for the social economic context in Vietnam. And our objective is that we provide infrastructure and the background which is needed to support sustainable building in Vietnam. And I would like to introduce how we do that. We have a team here with German partners and also with Vietnamese partners from universities, from research institutions, and also institutions which deal with education of construction workers. It's an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approach with different aspects towards sustainable building. Next slide. The background is what we perceived from our project work and previous project work in Vietnam, that there's a lot of change going on. The typologies are changing, so we talk more about residential high-rise buildings, but also the materials which are used in the Vietnamese construction market are changing. There is a change from, for example, burnt bricks to more industrialized building materials, and also the requirements towards energy efficiency and other building qualities are increasing. And all this poses challenges to the way buildings are built, and also gives rise to problems with building physics under the demanding hot and humid climate in Vietnam. Next slide. We address these topics in 5 work packages. One is setting the basis with fundamental data collection, social economic context analysis. Then we have a second work package which deals more with technical aspects. One is also looking at the technical measurement and characterization of materials, and also the characterization of building operation patterns. Then we have a work package which deals with governance and how our results can be made useful in the context of the government's framework in Vietnam. And then we have, of course, capacity development on different levels and for different stakeholders in the construction industry. All this is aligned with conferences, advisory board meetings, and outreach activities like we have today. And now I want to introduce a little bit more about the technical background. Can you continue? Yes, we have, for example, the objective to create facilities for material characterization, material research, and material testing. So at the Vietnamese Institute for Building Materials, building physics laboratory was established, also with the help of our industry partner, Netsch Taurus, and we are able there to measure, for example, heat conductivity and other hygrothermic properties of building materials. The next, please. At the same time, we are conducting life cycle assessment studies with the objective, on the one hand, to improve the production processes of materials. On the other hand, we would like to provide information so that designers and also other stakeholders in the design of buildings can choose the right materials based on environmental performance criteria and also based on material characteristics. The next slide, please. Important is also that we understand how buildings are operated and how they are used. So we have, on the one hand, a large-scale household survey, which will be reported by the colleagues of University of Hamburg later. And in the same buildings, or a subset of these buildings, we also did a long-term measurement so that we measure indoor climate, temperature, humidity, and also CO2 concentrations. And we have also building audits so that we understand also the technical background of buildings and can deduce from these results how buildings are operated. We also looked at recent weather climate sets for building simulation studies, because this is at the moment missing in the Vietnamese design community, and our project will provide these data sets for the public to do building simulation studies in future. The next slide. Last but not least, we have also capacity development activity. One part is that construction workers are trained to work with new materials, for example, with aerated concrete. It's a little bit different to work with them. And so our partner Baubildung Sachsen, together with the College of Urban Work and Construction, is preparing curricula for construction workers. But of course, we also work with our university partners for master student education, and also for the general public. The Competence Center for Sustainable Building in Vietnam is set up at the Hanoi University of Civil Engineering, also to promote sustainable building to the stakeholders in the construction industry and also to the general public. All this is summarized on our webpage, where you can find our project outputs. Next slide, please. Yes, this is that was a short overview about our CAMaRSEC project. Please be in contact in case there is need for discussion, or also if you want to connect to our results and to our work for your work in the construction sector in Vietnam. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Dirk Schwede. I mean, you managed indeed to present a very comprehensive project in 5 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that some of us and some of the participants will visit your website to understand a bit more, what is all in. It's a very rich project with addressing a lot of different facets of the construction industry. So very interesting, and thanks a lot for your work and that you're doing in Vietnam.
Thank you.
The next agenda point, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Do Hong Truong. He will give us an overview on state of sustainable buildings and green building certification schemes in Vietnam. I think there is no better person to do so, because Mr. Truong has 10 years of experience in the construction and real estate sector with top corporations such as Hoa Binh, Phumi Hung, Nam Long, and Refico, just some examples. And Mr. Truong has as well 10 years in the green building consulting business with Green Viet, where he leads a team of 30 people and completed more than 100 green building projects, both for foreign direct investors and as well local clients. So P&G, Chotun, Tata, Capital Land, Fukang, just. And with this, I would like to hand over to Truong.
Okay, so let me share the screen again. Sorry for the...
I think Truong is sharing, so he can...
I'm sharing my slides.
No, sorry, I would like to share the slides because I edited them slightly yesterday night.
Okay.
Okay, please let me share my screen one more time. So shall we continue?
Okay, so the agenda today will be 3 parts. The first one will be the overview of the available certification schemes that are quite popular in Vietnam so far. The second one, I will give you a bit of information about how green building development in Vietnam up to the last quarter from the SGS data. And the last part will be my personal recommendations for the real estate sector who are considering the green building adoption. Next slide, please. So in Vietnam right now, we have, I think, a wide range of certification available. And I will go through each of the certification as you see. And you see here from LEED, US, by the US Green Building Council, Lotus by the Vietnam Green Building Council, BC-CRIMA is from Singapore, EDGE is by IFC, an arm of World Bank. And recently we have the well-being focused certification scheme, namely WELL and FitWell from the US. Next, please. I feel LEED is the most popular certification scheme in Vietnam so far. And LEED is more applicable for the office building in the big cities, and also applicable for the factories, especially among the FDI factories that export to US or Europe. They also adopt the LEED certification for their manufacturing facilities. I think they have a certain pressure from the value chains. For example, the buyer from Nike, Adidas, or other buyers sitting in the developed countries. The LEED right now, from my experience, account for maybe 60% of the in terms of the number of green building projects. And office building also together with the factory account for up to 70%, 80% among the LEED adopted projects. Next, please. Lotus is the local certification scheme, and during the past 10 years, when we use the Lotus scheme, we have our own evaluation is that Lotus have certain advantage on the small to medium-sized projects, especially for the educational projects. And you can see on the slide, we have one vocational school funded by Germany, being built in Dong Nai province, and we are one of the green building consultant for this project, and it's been built. I think in the next month or 2, it will be finished with the Lotus Gold certification. Next one. The next one will be the BSEC Green Mark, and I myself call the tropical climate expert. Because the BSEC Green Mark from Singapore focus a lot on the natural ventilation enhancement, especially for the high-rise apartments, and right now it's adopted by Singapore developers, including Fraser, CapitaLand, and Capoland. And to be honest, BSEC Green Mark provides I think a very straightforward approach. Also the sustainable strategy that will be very applicable, very easy to apply for the high-rise building, especially in the south of Vietnam. Next. Next is Ash, and I myself call Ash is a rising star for high-rise apartments because it's less complicated to apply, and we have the very straightforward apps, which is very easy to use. Almost everyone can use, of course, after several days of education or training. They all can use the Ash app. And I think one of the special things is that Ash is supported by the IFC or the World Bank Group, which is very good in terms of the financial support. Next. And now, I think just several years back, the well-being right now is a new trend. And you can see the well and fit well from the US. And right now they focus a lot more, instead of sustainability, they focus more on the people well-being. So they focus on the, let's say they focus on the quality of the water, quality of the lighting, instead of the water saving and the energy savings. Or for example, they promote the occupant safety. I think in the LEED and Lotus is not really focused on those. So right now there's a trend of integrating the well-being practice into the normal projects, traditional project, or the green building projects that apply the LEED or Lotus certification scheme in Vietnam. Next, please. So the certification schemes for buildings, I can conclude that right now we have the wide range that suits various demands. And we don't have, as a green building consultant, we don't have any problems with recommending a more suitable certification tool to a specific project from a specific investor. So we don't have any problem with that. And I think it's sufficient enough for mass application. I mean, we don't need any more certification scheme that is available right now. And with the certification schemes, as I just present, we can use those schemes to benchmark to improve the design. I mean, in case the project does not need to go to the certification because it's quite painful process and also it's costly. So you can stop at the benchmarking, the sustainable strategy from the certification tool into your design, and I think it's good enough to go with the sustainable buildings. Next. So from the HGS, credit to HGS, we have those figures, and every quarter we receive this data from HGS, and you can see here's the Ash figure, LEED figure, and Lotus figure. And Ash right now we have almost 50 projects, LEED 100, and Lotus is 34, and those figures are the completed and awarded project. I mean the projects that have the certification already. But if you see the GFA, I mean the area of the project is a little bit different. For the Ash, the number of projects is smaller, but the GFA is one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest. LEED, the number of projects is the highest, but the GFA, I mean the area is in the middle. And Lotus, the number is the less, and also the GFA is the least one. So the next slide, please. You can see the from the pie chart, lead will be, I mean, in terms of the number of projects is the highest. Next one will be the Ash, and the last one will be the Lotus. But in terms of the GFA, Ash occupy more than 50% of the area, and the next one is the lead, and last one will be the Lotus. And that's why Lotus, I think, is more appropriate for the small and medium scheme at the moment. Next one. So why certification matters? Because from my point of view, sustainability more or less need measurements. So without measurement, I think it's very hard to track. And the certification will be a framework for the whole project team to follow. Right now, the ESG more or less have the problem with the framework, with the certification. But for the green building, we have a wide variety of certification schemes. So I think we are quite happy with the certification tool that help us to improve the projects together with all the project team. And the certification will serve as a means of communications or the praising or even the competition. Let's say a project with a green building certificate, and then I think the investor, developer can be proud of the certificate, and also the whole project team can be proud of. So the certification, I think, it helps a lot in terms of driving the sustainability forward. So if you find, let's say during the work that you find it hard to justify for going green, here are the answers. So let's say if going green, you have 3 types of costs. The first one is the consultancy cost. And every investor, every developer come to me and they complain about the consultancy fee, and that is not in their budget yet. But in fact, most of the consultancy fee in Vietnam, I think right now based on the hour rate. And as a one of the leader in the green building industry, we haven't made money yet. So I think the consultancy fee right now is quite fair in Vietnam. And the reward for the consultancy fee, if the investor paid more, is the optimal strategy from a third party for the projects. The next one, the next cost is the review or the certification paid to the third party. Let's say you pay to US Green Building Council or Vietnam Green Building Council. I think the reward is the credibility that helps balance the PR or marketing budget. I think every project have the PR and marketing budget, which is maybe up to 5% or 7%, including the sales. But if you have a certain certification, I think it has a lot in terms of widespreading the message, and also reduce a little bit the PR marketing budgets. And the last one will be the extra construction cost. And normally the payback, from our experience, the payback is 5 years for each of the system that you pay it, maybe a little bit more than the conventional projects. And last but not least is the intangible benefits from the green adoption have not been taken into account. For example, the stock price, for example, the branding of the company is raised after the green building adoption, something like that. I think it's very hard to justify the intangible benefits when you go green. Next one. Next, please. Yes. So my recommendations. If you want to involve the green building consultant, I think let's do that as early as possible, because the green building consultant will sit in the meeting, and also they will monitor the whole development process from the very early in the design stage, up to bidding, up to construction, and up to testing and commissioning. So imagine the project will have a third party as the green building consultant to monitor all the energy consumption, water consumption, material and waste, indoor air, environmental quality, sustainable side, all kinds of this during the, I think, maybe 3 years to 5 years during the project development. I think it's worth doing that if you consider going green.
Thank you very much, Trang, for giving this excellent overview about different schemes that are in Vietnam applied, and as well giving us some facts and figures in terms of numbers of green buildings that have been certified already. And thanks as well for sharing your recommendation. That might be some useful insights for our participants in here as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So with this, I would like to now go into even more practicality in terms of sharing facts and figures. So we will hear now the survey results that have been conducted among certified and conventionally constructed high-rise buildings in Ho Chi Minh City. And these results will be presented by Dr. Michael Weibel and Dr. Thuy Nguyen. So Dr. Weibel is a senior researcher at Hamburg University in Germany. He has been doing research in Vietnam, China, and Cambodia since 1996. A lot of experience in there. He is the project leader of Build for People, enhancing quality of life through sustainable urban transformation in Cambodia. And he's as well the sub-project leader of this CAMaRSEC project on climate adaptability research in the socioeconomic context of Vietnam. And he will be supported by, as I said, Dr. Thuy Nguyen. She's the CAMaRSEC sub-project research associate, and her research focus is in urban governance issues and particularly related to sustainable housing policies, communities of practices, and local innovations. And with this short introduction, I'm very much looking forward to listen to the survey results. Please, over to you.
Thanks, Bruno, for this very friendly introduction. Very much appreciated. Actually, I have to admit, I have some construction going on in my home office. I hope you are not disturbed by that. I will give my best to speak out loud that you don't hear any of that annoying noise in the background. Let me shortly present our presentation structure. First, we would like to embed our methodology and research design into the overall setting in Vietnam. Then we will briefly introduce our empirical research results based on a large-scale household survey. And this will be concluded by results, discussion, and key takeaway messages. So what we do in Hamburg, at Hamburg University, basically within CAMaRSEC, we are responsible for the socioeconomic dimension, governance dimension, and dissemination and impact management within CAMaRSEC. That's why also we do this stakeholder event today in cooperation with the European Chamber of Commerce and Green Sector Business Committee. Among others, we try to advocate for a competence center for sustainable building in Vietnam, located at Hanoi Civil Engineering University. Our team who did and contributed to the survey we are going to present consists of members from Hamburg University, evidently, but also from Hanoi University of Civil Engineering and Trong Duc Thanh University in Ho Chi Minh City. Bruno already mentioned about the relevance of construction in terms of global sustainability, 38% related to global carbon emissions. Increasingly, it has been mentioned in the Global Status Report, operation of buildings becomes relevant. And this is particularly, of course, the case in emerging countries like Vietnam, where people get more well off and operate more air conditioning machines, for example. So all aspects related to user behavior become more relevant to increase sustainability. In Vietnam, if we look at the figures from a recent report from Ministry of Construction, we also see that there are really high emissions and energy consumption levels, basically equivalent to the global level already. We do this research as well because from our part as social scientists, because obviously sustainable urban transformation is not only a technological challenge, but far more a social, organizational, economic, cultural, and political challenge. So we regard our background as social scientists as very relevant, for example, to increase research and insights into the aspect of user behavior. And that's why we did the survey in Vietnam. All in all, we surveyed about 560 households in Ho Chi Minh City and about 660 households in Hanoi. Today, we will only present about the results of our survey in Ho Chi Minh City, though, which was focused on Vietnamese nationals only and only on in regard of owners of apartments. Our survey has been done at a lot of sites covering the whole urban range, spatial range in Ho Chi Minh City, and a special focus was on House Neo, because House Neo has an EDGE certification, and one of our aim was to compare a green certified building with conventionally constructed buildings in terms of sustainability performance. All in all, 30% of all surveyed households have been done in House Neo, and we also included other certified buildings, so we come to 36%, about 1/3, and 2/3 of our sample have been non-certified building, conventionally constructed building with different ranges, market ranges existing. House Neo has been interesting for us, I mentioned before, because it's EDGE certified. It's located in District 9. There are in total 568 building units. And I also would like to take the opportunity to really thank to EasyLand and particularly to Olivier Denoc, because they provided great support to us in accessing households and accessing the building and to do our interviews. This is really very much appreciated, this great support from the side of EasyLand. So coming to the results, I'm doing it very fast because we have only 15 minutes presentation time. We have divided our results into 4 different aspects. At first, we introduce about socioeconomic conditions. Then we investigate a little bit more about habits, user habits. And last but not least, we will inform about environmental awareness issues and influencing factors. And those 2 parts will be presented by my colleague Thuy Nguyen, also belonging to Hamburg University and CAMaRSEC project. So starting with socioeconomic conditions, let me summarize some important findings. All in all, we have a higher share of female respondents into the survey. One reason could be that women have been more present at their apartments compared to men. And comparing the socioeconomic profile of House Neo inhabitants, we perceive that they are a bit younger than the others, that the family sizes are smaller, but their education levels are higher, and their income is a little bit less, which can be also shown that in comparison to the other interviewees, House Neo households own lesser cars and own less property in other settings of the city. We explain this with the target group of EasyLand and smaller apartment sizes, who more target the lower income and middle income families in Ho Chi Minh City. Coming to the habits already, I would like to introduce one of the most important findings of our survey. This graph is showing the average monthly power consumption. So this is a very important indicator for resource consumption. And if we compare monthly power consumption of House Neo with other conventionally constructed buildings, we see that a significantly lower consumption level is taking place at House Neo. And this has even been confirmed if we not related to the total power consumption, but we related to the power consumption per square meter, where we have basically the same finding. So one key result of our research is that a certified building, at least according to our survey, consumes less energy compared to a conventional constructed building. And this is really an evidence-based finding which shall facilitate further promotion of certified buildings in Vietnam from my perspective. We also investigated the monthly power consumption patterns among 50 households in House Neo. This is only an example with 10 households selected. And what was very interesting for us to see is that there's really a wide range of power consumption patterns among the different households. The big red line is the average of these 10 households. But all in all, we see a very diversified power consumption behavior. And from our perspective as social scientists, this is very interesting and needs further research and investigation from our side. We also asked of the availability of air conditioning devices and their energy efficiency performance levels. And we see that in House Neo, more people have energy efficient devices with a 4 or 5 star level compared to the conventionally constructed buildings. So there seems to be a higher awareness in buying this kind of better performing AC devices. And we also looked at the habits of cooling and compared the dry season and the wet season. And I don't want to go into details, but here we see as well that House Neo households show more sensitivity to the operation of air conditionings of temperature for cooling compared to the inhabitants of conventionally constructed buildings. By the way, we are very open to share this presentation later on. We cannot go into detail of every graph due to time constraints. So I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Thuy Nguyen, who will present now about environmental awareness issues.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning and good afternoon to all participants. So I will continue with the environmental awareness aspects and the factors that influence the household's power consumption. For the awareness aspects, we will present results related to the knowledge about green building certification, the attitudes towards energy saving lifestyle, and the factors for the household's purchase of the apartments. So the question is, do the general public in Vietnam know about the green building movements? And the answer is not really, because the majority of the respondents are not aware of green building certificates like H, Lotus, or LEED. For House Neo, even though the awareness is a little bit higher than the other non-certified buildings, interestingly enough, nearly 50% of the respondents in House Neo are not aware that their households are certified with green buildings. And the reason is maybe related to the education level, because the survey finds that the percentage of people not knowing about green building certificates decrease gradually along with the increase of their education level. So this is one of the interesting findings that we have. Another finding is related to the attitudes towards energy saving. Findings shows that House Neo households, they tend to be less dependent on the use of ACs for cooling, because they would agree more on the turning off of AC and switch to natural or fans for cooling whenever possible. And they also often turn on AC with eco mode in both seasons. And they agree to that they would open the window more in the dry season. Another finding is related to the factors for the households when they buy the apartments. And it's found out that House Neo households, they care more about factors like family health and environmental features of the apartment. For example, the weather protection, orientation, or the brightness of the rooms and the size of the windows. However, household residents also, they are more kind of pragmatic. They concern more about price issues, and they seem to be less kind of considerate about spiritual aspects like Feng Shui, and they don't really care about high value products and services for their daily life. Some similarities across all building types are found to be the services offered in the buildings, the investment value of the apartment, and also the opportunities for their family education and career development. So what are the factors influence the household's power consumption? The survey found out that there is a strong linear relationship between factors like household size, the income, and the education level with the power consumption. And this finding is consistent across all building types. Some other factors like age groups or the physical conditions of the apartment, for example, the floor range or the location of buildings and the people's lifestyle and behavior are not really consistent across all building types. We don't present the detailed kind of regression and correlation analysis here, but will be these findings are reported in our later report series. So these are some basic kind of influencing factors. And in conclusion, we this slide shows summarize all the above findings from the previous slide. So I would skip this slide because we will have the proceeding of the event later, and I would focus more on the more concise key takeaway messages here. So in general, we find that households in certified buildings pay about, in certified buildings here, including both house neo and also some other green buildings in the survey, they pay about 37% less for electricity than those living in conventional buildings. And environmentally, these households have better awareness and also exhibit more friendly lifestyle. And reasons might be twofold. Maybe because they already have the existing education and professional background, but also maybe their awareness is increased through the living environment when they live in the certified green building. This one note that I may miss to share previously is about the education background, and it might be it might affect their awareness about the knowledge of green building certification, but not necessarily influence like their power consumption. So that's why education, the more higher income, they might. People with higher education might have a better job and higher income, and they might still consume more power consumption due to their kind of living condition. And all in all, here we have our findings are very much based on scientific evidence, but they still need to verify it in more in-depth research, and we need to continue to conduct. And also there's also a need to compare the difference in terms of energy efficiency performance of green buildings under different certification schemes. I think that will be a very interesting study, and we hope that we can do it in the future. Yeah. So last but not the least, next slide, we have some list of reference for our presentation here, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Dr. Weibel, Dr. Thuy, for these great insights into the research results. And obviously now the question would be, how can we make use of this? And I think I take two things out of it. I mean, one, what you said, look, we have to raise the awareness. So even for people who are living in green buildings, they might not be aware of it, and just raising the awareness might, trigger as well further promotion of this type of green buildings. And the second, what is for me as well kind of a obvious here I see, is that being green is almost kind of a lifestyle. So you live in a green building, but then you live as well greener, and you take more care about the environment, etc. So thanks a lot for sharing this. And I think with this, we conclude kind of the first part of the presentations. And now for the panel discussion, I would like to hand over the moderation to Michael, and please.
Thanks, Bruno, for your very precise and concise moderation. I would like to take over to moderate the panel discussion. I'm very glad that we have 5 renowned experts and prominent figures of the construction scene in Vietnam present. And this would be Ms. Hien from Easyland, Mr. Mathieu Bonnet, CEO of Telia Group Vietnam, Mr. Douglas Snyder, Senior Advisor to Ardor Queen, one of the leading construction companies in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. Then we have Tim Middleton, member of the Vietnam Green Building Council Board of Directors. And last but not least, Bruno, Ecocycle and Sustainability Director of INSI, Siam City Cement, Vietnam. So at first, I would like to ask to introduce about you and your field a little bit more into detail. So I would like to have a short self-introduction round before we really start with the first questions related to challenges in the green building sector according to your perception. So I would like to give the floor to Ms. Hien first, and then we move on to Mathieu, Douglas, Tim, and Bruno.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Happy that you are joining us for this super interesting discussion on sustainable development in Vietnam. My name is Hien. I am with EZLand. We are a real estate developer that focuses on sustainable and affordable property development in Vietnam. So we're happy to contribute to the findings of Dr. Michael Weiber and Thuy Nguyen research, and happy to further sharing our insights on the industry.
Thank you, Hien. Mathieu.
Good afternoon, good morning. Mathieu Bonnet from Artelia, Vietnam. I've been in Vietnam for the last 15 years, acting in the project management, in the engineering, in the green consultancy services in the building, and we have experienced a lot of good things over the last few years. So I'm very happy to be able to witness the good changes, but also the challenges coming in front of us.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to be part of this conference. Actually, I really enjoyed the presentations before this point. And so I've been working in green building since 2003. I'm a lead AP from the United States and exclusively working on green building in Vietnam since about 2014. And working with USAID and the Ministry of Construction to try and promote green building. And then I went on to working with Ardor, and now I serve as an advisor. So I'm actually also on the Vietnam Green Building Council, but I'm here with Ardor. But I'm glad for this great collection of people and ideas, and I look forward to participating more.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Michael. So my name is Tim, and I'm here from the VGBC today. I've been in Vietnam for 10 years. Actually, 10 years ago, I was working with the VGBC on Lotus rating tool development and promotion of green building awareness in Vietnam. And for the last 9 years, I've been working as a consultant, both in architectural consulting and sustainability consulting in Hanoi. It's also a pleasure to be able to join in this and discuss green building certification. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruno?
Yeah, so I'm representing INSI, Siam City Cement, Vietnam in this panel discussion. I think we are one of the leading construction materials provider in the south of Vietnam, mainly cement, concrete, but we have as well light building materials. We are very much interested in that topic. We have seen that, you know, the construction industry, the building industry is responsible for a large amount of CO2 emissions. So we are very keen on finding ways on how to reduce this. I would say we are kind of a leader. We have all our products having the green labels from Singapore Green Building Council. And as well, just 2 months ago, we were the first company in Southeast Asia and the cement industry who registered an EPD.
Thank you for this first insights. So I would like to ask you a bit more specifically what current challenges and issues you perceive in regard of promotion of green buildings and green building certifications in Vietnam. Maybe you can say something about which problems you regard you see in regard of the institutional scheme, like the state, in regard of the market, and if you see some problems among civil society organizations as well. So I would like to hand over to Hien one more time.
Thank you, Michael. Happy to be the first. In regards to carbon, in Vietnam, we, as a developer, I think this is the biggest challenge for us. On the energy side, I think a lot of that can be fixed with great design, and which was we've been doing. On the carbon side, it's a bit harder because the education and the knowledge on that front is even fewer in Vietnam. And most of the embodied carbon of our project is in our construction materials. And the popular construction method in Vietnam is, concrete. And right now in Vietnam, we don't have more innovative, different option for that. So naturally, our alternative would be engaging in a carbon market, but that is very expensive, and this is also not very developed in Vietnam. So for us, carbon is the next challenge and the next frontier. We are right now trying to look for different options in cement alternative. And I don't know if INSEE actually have those kind of products, but in the US, they would use slag and different aggregates that would reduce the carbon footprint of the concrete. So I think that's what we're trying to achieve in our next project, but it is a very big challenge, and I'm very interested to hear the experience of others green consultants on this panel who might have worked on other projects that I've seen things happen that we might not be aware of.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Maybe I can jump in here, Michael, because I think the topic of carbon concrete, etc., has been addressed. So I think we are fully aware of this, and this is as well why we would like to be quite transparent with the environmental footprint, carbon footprint for our products. That's why we actually went this step further to have an EPD, to have an environmental product declaration on all of our products. And definitely there's a lot we can do, and I'm pretty proud to say that we're having the lowest carbon footprint of the industry for various reasons, in terms of green manufacturing, what we are doing in there, but definitely as well in terms of product mix, as you mentioned. If we have a low clinker factor cement, if we have a low carbon concrete, I think this will be beneficial for green buildings. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would like to hand over to Mathieu. Please add your insights in that respect.
Well, there are a lot of things to say, definitively, but as far as of green building, if there is something to say on the institution, I would say that besides the lack of and the low incentive today that we have on the green building and incentive, especially for the investors from the government, I would say that we have better and better regulation in terms of building design, meeting a good standard, but we have little requirement in terms of building performance, especially during the whole project lifetime of a building, from material sourcing up to decommissioning. And that's something that might be addressed very soon in the regulation, so that the performance during the building life is definitively more important, and that's something that might be addressed in the regulation soon.
Thank you. Douglas, what are your experiences?
Yeah, so we've actually seen a big uptick in kind of demand for projects. We've been approached. It was really strange. During COVID, we had a lot of requests for more consulting. So now I think we're doing 23 projects right now, including net zero. So I think there is movement. I think there is movement going forward, and that particular net zero project is from an international investor, which kind of points me in the other direction, which is the financial pressure that's building globally. So there's, according to the IFC, there's 9 trillion set to be that's targeted for net zero energy projects by investors. There's also 19.7 trillion US dollars targeted for overall investment in Southeast Asia in the next 9 years. and green bonds are oversubscribed. So I think what's happening is that there's a challenge between the ESG and green investment market meeting what's happening on the ground in Vietnam. When we were working with the IFC doing business development, I just subcontracted to do that, and the IFC was engaging with a few local banks because they try to also work with that sector to try and stimulate the market. So I know that they had kind of soft agreements with Nama Bank and TP Bank and Vietine, but I think one of the challenges is more sophistication in bringing these real available investment advantages of lower, usually soft loans, lower investment rates to the property market in the context of green. So, and you know, so I think I'll leave it at that. Maybe we'll circle around a couple of times, but I think that's a huge opportunity and a solvable problem. Yeah.
Thank you. Tim, I would like to refer to the civil society and questions of social awareness and behaviors and also market demand, because one of the most amazing results of our survey was that 50% of residents of House Neo have not been even aware that they live in a certified building. So how do you see potential to raise public awareness about the value of green building certifications, and what role could maybe Vietnam Green Building Council take into that?
Yeah, I think the presentation that you gave really speaks for itself about this item, about civil society and social awareness. I think most of us in the industry in Vietnam will be aware that sustainability, awareness, and a desire to build more sustainably is something that is growing in the last couple of years. But the awareness of third-party certifications that can actually demonstrate to what standard these buildings are built at is probably like the part that's lacking in awareness. And yeah, the Vietnam Green Building Council is working on a new strategy, and part of that is this awareness raising in order to make people aware that just because something is called sustainable or green doesn't necessarily mean that it is, and that there are these tools, as Mr. Quang pointed out, that can actually cover almost all types of buildings and can be applied in all parts of Vietnam as well. So yeah, there's a great opportunity there to strengthen the understanding of what is green and what isn't green.
Thank you. So I have another question to Ms. Hien. As a representative of the corporate sector, what would you expect the state to initiate to promote more green buildings in Vietnam? Mathieu mentioned about incentives, but maybe you have some more specific ideas what role the state could take in Vietnam to promote more green buildings.
Thank you, Michael, for the question. It's actually, yeah, very interesting question. I think the role of the government has to be bigger in the sustainable development world. Simply put, is that because, as we have already discussed, the education and awareness of green building is so low in Vietnam, we cannot rely on the market to lead the way because the demand is so low. So in those instances, I think it's very important that the state steps in and basically made it into a requirement. So I've seen this myself firsthand in the developed world, in the US. I worked for a while in California, which is, you know, the most, I can say so, the most green-oriented state. And they have very stringent, you know, building code. And I think just by having that, it already raised the standard and the average of the construction industry here. Whereas, you know, the states next door, Arizona, or they don't have the same requirements. And you can see that, you know, developers can get away with a much less energy efficient building, or even, you know, carbon, high high carbon footprint buildings. And it's much harder to do that in California. So from my personal point of view, the state needs to have a very comprehensive regulations in place. And of course, it's going to be a steep learning curve for everyone. But other than that, I don't see any other way to really incentivize this. Even though actually what IFC is doing already is a great incentive that is in the private sector with the financing part, as Tim was or Douglas was mentioned, that they are trying to create a financial ecosystem that would promote sustainability among the users and also among the developers. And so, so from my point of view, I think those are the two ways that the market can go forward.
Thank you. So my next question would go to Mathieu. You are representing Artelia Group Vietnam, but I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you are also responsible for the whole of Southeast Asia. So maybe you could explain a bit from the perspective of the corporate sector, what would be like the vision of Artelia to promote more green buildings in the region. So you have any business plans, or what are the attitudes and corporate strategy from Artelia to do that in the region?
So many things have been said already, but I would say that besides the incentive and the performance, I think for the investors, the users, the real energy cost and the real material cost, and we all know that the electricity cost and the material cost are surging now. And even if you can pay for electricity in some part of the world now, in the North China, you can't access to electricity. So I think that's something which is becoming more and more obvious for the corporate, especially for the investor and the users. We definitively are looking at making some savings. I mean, savings in terms of materials, especially lighter structure, less concrete, less expensive, and the steel, for instance, is definitively surging now. So that's something in terms of. I think we are trying all our best to communicate more on the real saving. Kwang mentioned that the cost of the additional cost of construction, which might be saved on a 5 years time, I would say it will be reduced in the coming years. We know that especially in Vietnam, the electricity cost is quite low for the time being, but that will increase, and obviously the impact for the investor or the users will be huge later on. So that's something that they have to anticipate. And I would say that one of the best opportunity to promote the green building is that will really create saving for them.
Thank you. So my next question would go to Douglas again. Mr. Kwang mentioned about the consultancy fees to promote a green design for a building, for example. What are your experiences in regard of that fees, and are the fees paid probably not sufficient? What would you expect, and how we can cover better this kind of aspects of fee, which seems to be a challenge or an obstacle to convince developers to promote green building design? So please share from your practical professional experiences.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, particularly in Vietnam. We've even found that fees are more closer to an international standard, even if we do projects in Thailand. So, and particularly, of course, compared to the West, compared to fees from the United States or from Europe, it's significantly less. Both as an absolute value, but also taken as a percentage of project cost. So. I'm not exactly sure where the trend comes from, where design fees and design consulting fees are not as highly valued in Vietnam as they are in other countries, but it is a real challenge. And for us, the approach has just been to try and really become efficient in the way we process the projects, so that we can still offer an attractive consulting fee, but still survive in the market. But it is a real challenge. I think that most likely the better the education around green building and what is entailed in doing a 12-month simulation or processing all the paperwork, et cetera. I think maybe if there's greater understanding of that, there'd be more empathy from the investor side. Yeah.
Thank you. So my next question would go to Tim. What are your perception on changes in the past 5 or 10 years? You have been active in Vietnam for quite a long time in regard of green building. Has there been any progress, and what do you expect in the future in regard of the development of the green building movement in Vietnam, and what would you hope for actually?
Yeah, in the last 10 years or so, there has been a significant shift in perception. Looking back 10 years ago, I think most of the questions around green building from the private sector and investors centered around the cost. And a lot of questions about whether green building could be done in Vietnam. Wouldn't it cost much higher than it does in other countries? Is there the capacity to do it in Vietnam? And a lot of, I think, investors and developers stopped there because we didn't have the answers yet for Vietnam. But I think that's really shifted maybe about 5 years ago, where you almost don't hear much about a lot of discussion about additional capital costs now. And the shift has gone more to, okay, what exactly are the marketing benefits? What are the benefits for the users, for the buyers of green building projects? Yeah, so you can see this in the VGBC did a study about additional capital costs in, I think it was 2014 or 2015. And it demonstrated basically that the additional costs for green building in Vietnam are not pretty much the same as in other countries, whether that be LEED or whether that be Lotus. There's a pretty close correlation between that. And in fact, there hasn't been research done since then to catch up with. Now we're almost up to 200 buildings, as Mr. Quang showed. We don't have new information about that because I think the main reason is that the question isn't being asked as much. So yeah, I think I'd just like to pick up on what Hien and Bruno were talking about in terms of things such as carbon in materials and life cycle things. I think that's really where a lot of other countries who have more well-developed green building markets at the moment are already moving towards those sorts of concerns. And I think in Vietnam here, we're not quite there yet. We're still looking at some of the more basic parts of green building, such as energy efficiency, which of course are extremely important. But for example, we still don't see strong implementation or any implementation of the energy efficiency building code in Vietnam. So I think that if we saw enforcement of the energy efficiency building code, then it would help bring the whole market up so that green building doesn't seem so much of a jump anymore, because all buildings are required to meet this regulation. And once we get to that stage, then it will be much easier to look at more broadly having more materials with EPDs, being able to decarbonize structural systems, select materials that have lower embodied energy and so on. Of course, there are projects that have these high goals, but I think we'll see a greater market adoption once the rest of the market can be drawn up a bit higher. Yeah.
Thank you for this very valuable experience. If any other panelist would like to add on this kind of perception on changes in the past 5-10 years and provide expectations in regard of the future market development in terms of green building, you are warmly welcome.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. We have, as a real estate developer, and as your research has shown, like even though our residents have lived in a green building, but they are not aware of the certification part. We have done a lot of work trying to educate our own, residents and target market. And in that process, we have realized that, for our middle class market, price point is the number one driver of their decision to buy. And so we sometimes in that struggle, as Douglas has mentioned, of like, if we invest, spending more capital expenditure to make our buildings even greener, like solar panels or low E windows, who will pay for that? Because clearly our customers are not aware and therefore not willing to spend that extra money, with us, invest that money with us. So I think that's going to be a continuous question on how do we handle that. And then because of that, we, for a long time, were hesitant to commit ourselves, in more rigorous goal. But we actually did pull the plug, and last week we told the IFC that we're gonna do all of our projects in the future with advanced edge, which requires a higher energy efficiency, so 40% saving. So that's a huge, huge commitment that we're nervous about, but also very excited. But I think the question of cost is undoubtedly going to be a question for the future as well. Like, how do we handle that? Will the market, catch up and offer, more reasonable, more cheaper price of low E classes or solar panels, so that the cost that the developer has to bear is not so significant anymore?
Thanks for sharing that experience. I would also like to mention again that in a market where there's a lot of greenwashing, particularly in terms of marketing, I think green building certifications provide credibility and trust into this. And I also think that by our empirical research, we can provide evidence-based findings that certified buildings really actually support reduction of living costs for residents of those buildings. I would like now to switch over to the open discussion led by my colleague Tui, and for example, also Mr. Kwang and Dirk Schwede as previous speakers could add their insights and share comments. But maybe there have been also some questions in the chat which might be answered through you. So I would like to hand over to Tui to lead the open discussion right now. Thanks a lot for your very interesting insights. It was great having you in our panel discussion. So Tui, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the panel discussion. And now I would like to open the discussion session, which everyone can join and share the point of view or comments or questions. As you know, that the objective of this event is to share the insights from the CAMaRSEC project to the public and listen to experts' opinions, but also to get the recommendations or sharing from the wider public on all aspects of the green buildings movement based on our topic. So everyone are welcome to join. I can see here there's one question in the chat box, and I will read it out loud, and everyone is invited to provide comments and answers if they have. So the question is how the green standard for industrial real estate, such as factory or warehouse in Vietnam. So I guess this question is about the difference between the green standards for different types of real estate, right? It's from Elite GDP, and I don't know, anyone in our panel discussion or experts can answer or provide feedback to this question.
Yes, I can try.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, I think this is a very good question because different building types also offer different opportunities, and especially industrial buildings. They are normally used by the clients themselves for a long time, and also there the construction cost is not so much the important thing. It's more what happens inside the building, and also companies want to show a certain commitment, a certain responsibility, and so on. A lot of our projects in China and also in Thailand, where we applied certification schemes like LEED and also DGNB, were industrial projects. And so I think this is a good start to talk to these people and these investors, because they have a different kind of interest also in this. But of course, it's also important to push the issue of green building in residential buildings and in office buildings and so on. But industrial clients, they have a different approach to green building, and they can have perhaps also some impact on the market and be the front runners.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you very much for your insights. And there are some also sharing in the chat box about the question, and someone mentioned about the LEED certificate is also applied for industrial project or kind of public housing and buildings. Insights that should be shared. So maybe Tim.
Yeah, if I can give a comment on that. Actually, industrial projects were the first adopters of certification in Vietnam. So even while the VGBC was developing, there was already movement in some LEED projects in the south of Vietnam over 10 years ago. So they are definitely well developed. And as Quang mentioned, LEED is definitely a market leader for industrial certifications here. However, Lotus also has Lotus has a number of projects in the industrial sector. It's not that there are no projects for Lotus. I would say that a lot of projects choose LEED because they're getting pressure from their supply chains from overseas, and LEED is just a well-known one internationally. Lotus is also very easily applied for industrial projects. Edge also has, you can apply Edge to factory projects as well. So there are many options for industrial projects. And in the VGBC, we're also looking at the moment about creating a new tool for industrial parks as well. So that's maybe something to keep an eye on for larger scale developments. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. And anyone else have questions or comments? Dirk, please.
Yes, I would like to ask a question from the perspective of our CAMaRSEC project. We are trying to offer and develop some solutions to solve problems in the application of these schemes. And I would like to know from the audience and also from the expert what kind of problems we need to solve on the technical side. We talked a little bit about the awareness before, but also on the technical side. Bruno said they have now the first EPD, which is applicable for the Vietnamese market. Our experience from CAMaRSEC is that the database is very, very limited. And so if you want to do LCA studies, then we basically lack the information which is needed. Or perhaps there could be a technology which is not produced in Vietnam, which is limiting the application of real green buildings. And I would be interested to talk about these things, that we perhaps find also points where we have to concentrate on and put the finger in the wound in order to unleash the potentials in the green market and green construction market.
I do have one problem I want to raise with you, Dirk. Is that what I've been struggling with is, Vietnam has terrible air quality, right? Mm-hmm. And Green Mark in Singapore is more suitable for tropical buildings. But in many ways, it's not suitable for Vietnam, because if we encourage natural ventilation, then how do we solve the problem of well-being of the occupants because of the terrible air quality? So I don't have the answer yet, and I've been trying to wrap my head around this. You know, if we promote on one hand the natural ventilation, we inadvertently is telling our occupants to take in that terrible outdoor air. But then what is the alternative? So just want to put out there, if anyone else has thought about this issue and have some, you know, some ideas, I would love to hear about that.
I can add something on that. Yeah, I mean, it's very true that there's both pollution on the inside of the structure as well as outside. And so adequate filtration is necessary. So F7s or F8 ranking from Europe, or they MERV 11 or 13 from the United States. So you need for the incoming air, you have to have good filtration so that you can reduce the CO2 that's in the space, so everybody can still feel awake and fresh. But so you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. But that's obviously an added cost. And in commercial buildings, having a good fresh air system and a good ventilation system is very customary outside of Vietnam. But in Vietnam, it's not necessarily what's thought of or planned out really well, is what I found when looking at existing buildings. And so in the mind of developers here, it might be seen as an extra cost, where it's actually it would be considered an existing or current cost outside of Vietnam. So it's a little bit tricky trying to sell that.
Thank you.
Yes. I would also like to answer shortly, also from the view of our CAMaRSEC project. In parallel to the household survey, which was reported, we are doing measurements in buildings. And one of the findings is that many people naturally ventilate their apartments. And this is also very energy saving still. I think the solution is that the air must get better outside, and that is, and then we can have natural ventilation, because this is the most reasonable thing to do. On the other hand, I understand what you say. When we want to condition the spaces, we need to close the buildings, they need to be airtight. And then from our experience in Germany, ventilation system with heat recovery, in the case of tropical climate with heat and moisture recovery, are also instrumental for energy saving. And this is true and obvious in larger buildings where we have larger air volumes to exchange, then the technology is cheaper. In residential buildings, I think that will not pay off at the moment. But the technology also needs to be developed for cheaper ventilation system with heat and moisture recovery. This is a process which at the moment happening in Germany. Ventilation systems get cheaper, and then they are more applied, and air quality is better, and so on. So I think we are at the beginning of a process also in Vietnam, and we have to identify these technologies we need in order to develop them strategically.
This discussion also relates to also very much to the policy framework, right? The role of the government in guiding all these kind of technical standards. And maybe to add to the discussion, I would like to invite Mr. Dinh Việt Duy. He's also a very known expert in the field of green buildings in Vietnam. And maybe Mr. Duy can share some points of view from your perspective. Mr. Duy or Mr. Bao, are you here in the forum?
Mr. Duy is here.
Actually, I work for ACC Group. I am CEO for our company is developer and manufacturer for many factory projects in Vietnam. Actually, we are interested in green building. And we invested one apartment in Ho Chi Minh City, and we got list silver for that project 1 year ago. And we also have a four or five factory project. We got LEED from certified to LEED Gold. Actually, we think factory and other kind of building also actually the very sustainable building in Vietnam in the future. So we very interested for that project.
I don't know if the audience have other questions or points to share.
Perhaps I have some information to share, or
Yes.
I want to add, let's say. You mentioned the nature of ventilation. I was living in Vietnam for over 6 years and returned to Germany last year. So what I'm doing is, besides teaching with the Hanoi Architecture University, is that this year I had a class where we focus on vertical city. Vertical city, why? Because I tried to give the message to the students to think and understand the city in a vertical way. Means what's happened to big, huge city, mega cities, developing cities in dimensions of Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City with air climate. When we talk about air filtration, air cooling, let's say give the urban fabric more diversity. And so the plan was to push the students in the direction to develop a high-rise, which is understood as a forest. The advantage of that is that the forest is actually the filter, the air filter for the building, but it also cools down the apartments, the building itself, but also the city. That could be, let's say, a helpful understanding to think about natural ventilation, because the air pollution in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City is quite high, as everyone knows. So the key factor is the value behind. How much value besides of costs can have a tower like that for the entire city, but for the tower itself? And thinking that tower as a generator in terms of air quality, living quality, energy sufficiency, then it becomes more clearer that those or such towers could be very, very suitable for cities, big cities in Asia, but also in Europe, which is nowadays lagging behind the developments in Asia. So, but I think in terms of living quality and air quality, a vertical garden, or let's say towers or buildings, which incorporate the green element from the first stage on, really helps to decrease costs for the long run. The question for the cost is always a very short-term discussion with most investors or developers. They don't see the benefits right now or in 1 year. They want to have their profits in 1 year, but they have to think the profits in 5 or 6 or 10 years, because such towers will last for 50 years. So it's often a discussion about values in general, in how to implement the suitable materials which are available in the market and to apply to the building. But I think in the long run, it really helps to understand buildings itself a bit different from nowadays.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. Actually, we also had some report talking about the kind of forest buildings, and yeah, it has a lot of potential, but surely the cost issue is really something that we have to consider, and not only to install it, but also to maintain the buildings. But yeah, something that definitely need to be considered for even the hit many cities in the world. I think we are nearly approaching the time. We are behind the schedule for like nearly 10 minutes, but seems that we had a very good discussion, and we started a little bit late. So I think that we are okay with the schedule. There's also some remaining questions in our a team and work. For example, like why Vietnam doesn't have a very of its own certification scheme. Like Germany, they have DGA, and Green. Singapore, they have their own one, and Vietnam is has so many things going on at the same time. And maybe I just think the investors and the buyers would be maybe a little bit confused and which one to follow and things like that. So the question, maybe for my perspective, is that what is the role for Vietnamese government to lead the the process of defining a very proper certification scheme for Vietnam based on its own context, because the condition is the same, the building are in the same country and same cultural, traditional and political, social context, and why we need to have so many different schemes for certifying green buildings. I don't know if someone else has some quick input into that, or maybe it's the topic for our next workshop in the future.
I can try and answer that quickly if I can.
Yes, please.
Basically, I think Vietnam has many tools available, and I think that it's not uncommon in many countries to have many different tools, and that's basically organically developed based on what investors from overseas looked for, and then also, of course, Lotus developing and Edge developing. And the Ministry of Construction has done quite a bit of research on what tools are the most suitable for Vietnam, and we are expecting that they may endorse one or multiple ones soon. I think there's room enough in Vietnam for multiple certifications, but I think what we really need to see is if the government here can apply to publicly funded projects, Lotus or any tool that they choose, I think we'll see a much bigger uptake in green building. And the thing is, I think the green building certifications help to define what is green, what is sustainable, and what is not. And I think the situation we have in Vietnam is less confusing than if there wasn't any certification tools available. So if developers are interested, as Quang mentioned, and as we in Ardor and other consultants would say, is that we have no problem in recommending which one will be best for the project. But if the government can take a decisive step to endorse green building or a certain tool or whatever, then I think we'll see a much greater adoption of green building certification here.
Thank you, Tim, very much. I think it's now for the closing remarks already, and thank you so much for everyone's discussion. Now, I would like to turn back the floor to Mr. Frank Bogader, the Vice Chairman of EuroCham Green Growth Sector Committee and the head of the Water Working Group. Yes. So, Mr. Frank, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I trust you can hear me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Frank Bogader, representing the Green Growth Sector Committee of EuroCham Vietnam today. Thanks to the speakers and panelists who made us learning a lot today. Given the unbelievable but also often uncoordinated growth of Vietnam's urban and industrial areas, the issues and potential solutions that you have presented today are definitely needed to turn Vietnam's building and construction sector into something sustainable, particularly against the backdrop of the climate crisis, I think. We understood that the CAM-MARSEC project is supposed to setting the stage for sustainable buildings in Vietnam, proposing sustainable materials and O&M schemes. Also worth to notice are those activities dealing with governance. I think that's very important. So CAM-MARSEC is good news, and good luck to everybody involved in this project. Also good to know about the existing certification schemes in Vietnam, which are giving investors an incentive for doing better. We have learned that survey reports as presented today clearly indicate that green buildings are making a difference, but we also learned that incentives and regulations are still lacking. I guess not only in this sector, by the way. Since I am a water guy, I'm a little bit disappointed that water issues haven't been discussed today, but I'm looking forward to another follow-up webinar where water-related issues may play a role. On behalf of the Green Growth Sector Committee, I would like to invite you to get in touch with us on any matter related to green sustainable buildings and related issues. I would like to thank all speakers, panelists, and the audience for joining us today, and I'm hereby closing this event. Xin cảm ơn các anh các chị và hẹn gặp lại lần sau. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bruno.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tui.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for the speakers and panelists.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.